How we doing, everybody, and welcome to Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage. We are back. It is a great Wednesday, a fantastic Wednesday here in the great state of Wisconsin. And hey, we got a special guest joining us today here. He is a senior columnist for ChicagoSportsHQ.com. If you want to find him there, Dustin Reis, I believe I said that right. I'm not sure, is joining me today here. We're going to talk all about the NL Central and NFC North. So, hey, Dustin, how we doing on this Wednesday? A great Wednesday here in the great state of Wisconsin.
Doing well. First off, thanks for having me on. At least we're getting semi-good weather in Wisconsin for now, but we'll see how long that can last until we get back to, the Jekyll and Hyde side of things.
You never know. You never know when the snow is going to come. I've been told there's still that possibility we're going to get some snow yet, so we're waiting on it. We're definitely waiting on it yet, though. But, hey, we got Dustin here today. We got lots to talk about. First off, I want to jump into the NL Central here. And I want to talk about everything has to do with Cubs, Cardinals, Pirates, wherever you want to go with it. But first I want to ask you, we heard from Pat Murphy with the Brewers there. He said that he wasn't as worried about spring training stats, like with pitchers and everything like that coming out of spring there because, hey, it's spring training, guys are working through things. I'm kind of in that same boat. I'm not so worried about it. Yeah, you wish some of your main guys, your closer, whatever it is, would pitch a little bit better, would show a little bit more there in spring. But, hey, it's okay. End of the day, I want to see what you thought about what Pat Murphy had to say about his club coming out of spring there.
I mean, ultimately, I'm never one that typically puts too much stock into the spring training numbers unless you're one of those players that's trying to make the team. Like in the Brewers case, you have Jackson Chourio, who's obviously their top prospect and one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball, and he's trying to make this team as an everyday player. Well, I would need to see something from him in spring training. I need to see him hit the ball. I need to see him take more pitches because of his high strikeout rate. That's not something you want to see in spring training, especially. But when it comes to like veteran players like Devin Williams, Freddie Peralta, Christian Yelich, any of those guys, the numbers don't matter in spring training. It's what they do in their at-bats. Are they seeing pitches? Are they taking pitches? Are they making solid contact consistently? And then from the pitching side of things, are they hitting their location? Do they have the feel for their pitches? Do they seem like they're working on either a different pitch or kind of like working on different location side of things? As long as that stuff is where it needs to be, I tend not to worry about it. But if you start to see kind of the same things affecting them from game to game and really no adjustments being made, once we start getting into those final days before the regular season, that's when you kind of start to worry a little bit because then you're kind of starting to question what are they working on and have they even shown any signs of improvement in the practice sessions leading up to the games.
Okay, yeah. I 100% agree with you there. I mean, you got to get the work in for the young guys. That's what spring training's all about, right? Getting the work in for the young guys, seeing them going up against some of the big league talent there from opposing teams. And I mean, a lot of guys are talking about it. Do you want to see spring training kind of shortened? And I don't think so. I think it's perfect right where it is. If anything, I think it might be too short at times because you see a lot of these young guys, they get sent down even earlier than the rest of these guys. So we don't get to see a lot of them. I know the Brewers had a bunch of their better prospects already sent away back down to their AAA, wherever they're going to end up, to their camp. So I wanted to hear from you. What do you think with spring training? Is it too long? Is it too short? I mean, where are you at with the idea of spring training right now?
I personally think it's too short because I'm one of those people that watches baseball 12 months out of the year. So if spring training started in January, I would be all for it, even though the players aren't going to be for it. But you have to look at it like the first, 3 weeks of spring training, your camp size is like 80 people just because you have all the minor league players mixed with the major league players and you're just trying to get them their everyday workouts. And then pretty much every 3 days, you're going to have different lineups thrown out there. We're getting to the point now where we're roughly 2 weeks from the start of the regular season. Tomorrow is officially the 2-week part before the regular season starts. And that's kind of when you start seeing like a lot of these prospects getting sent out to minor league camp because now you're getting to the point where managers are going to start using their everyday lineups more consistently. Their everyday players are going to start getting 3-4 at-bats a game as opposed to the 1 or 2 at-bats that they were getting earlier in the year. And your prospects now are going to go from getting 3-4 at-bats a game to maybe 3-4 at-bats a week. And most of their work right now is going to be kind of on the backfields in the minor league camp.
Okay. Yeah. 100% agree with you there. So sticking with kind of talking NL Central there, I want to move into some of the standings right now, projected standings, right? You can only read so much in the projected standings, but right now, they kind of have the NL Central being pretty bad. I mean, all the way around. You look at FanGraphs, I believe right now, looking at it, the Cardinals projected at 83-79, winning the division. Cubs coming in at just 500, and then the Brewers right below them there in third place, followed by the Reds and the Pirates. To me, we're going to get into it here, but I don't know how I feel about the Cardinals. You know, last season, dumpster fire. This season, they added some starting pitching. They're going to get a little bit better there in the rotation, but still some question marks in there. You don't know what you're going to get in that lineup this year, so how does that all translate? The Cubs, I mean, we're going to talk about it here too, but you got Craig Counsell now. How does that translate with this Cubs team? Pieces being brought in. The Brewers are the biggest question for me. They can go one of two ways, if you really ask me, end of the day. Either DL Hall and like Jacob Mizorowski, one of the Brewers' top pitching prospects, will pitch fantastic, and the rotation will be fine, the lineup will be fine, and everything will work out. Or it could go the complete opposite way, and we can see a dumpster fire and a rebuild, complete rebuild, out of the Brewers here. Reds and Pirates kind of where I expected them to sit. So to you, I mean, looking at just hearing those, what do you think right now, projections with this NL Central? Where do these teams stack up?
I do have the Cardinals as the team to beat, mainly because Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado both had down years last year. You cannot expect both of them to have a down year again this year when you look at kind of how their career has gone. Maybe one of them is kind of slightly below average yet, but you're not going to have them both have down years at the same time. So even if one of those guys bounces back, their offense is going to be instantly better because of it. So I do expect their offense to be better this year. I do expect their offense to be more consistent because if I had to guess, I think Nolan Arenado is going to be the one to bounce back more so than Paul Goldschmidt, just because Goldschmidt's getting up to 35 now versus Nolan Arenado still only 30. But yeah, the addition of the starting pitching is what's going to help St. Louis. That was ultimately their biggest flaw. Jack Flaherty was never healthy last year, and he really hasn't been healthy since 2020. A lot of the people they were counting on in their rotation, Miles Mikolas and them, just kind of fell off a cliff, especially the second half of the year. So what do? Yes, they may have taken out an AARP clause in their contracts, but I mean, they brought in Lance Lynn, who St. Louis is very familiar with Lance Lynn, and some of Lance Lynn's best career numbers came with St. Louis. You brought in Kyle Gibson, who is an innings eater and a durable starter. And then you brought in Sonny Gray, who is one of the first moves in free agency and is honestly going to be the biggest move, I think, to that Cardinals rotation because he's going to be the ace of that staff now. And he's shown that even last year at one point, he was the best pitcher in the American League at one point last year in terms of ERA and everything. So Sonny Gray has proven that he's still got it left. As long as they can get better starting pitching, that offense is going to be good enough to carry them. And I think they're going to be an 87-90 win team. I do think they're the team that beat in the Central, but it's not going to be one of those dominating teams that we've seen in the past. I think they're like an 87-90 win team at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If everything works out for that Cardinals team, they will be a good team again. I mean, that was my worry last year watching the standings. I was like, when are the Cardinals going to come back? They always do it. They have a slow start, and then all of a sudden they find their gear, and all of a sudden they're right behind you there in the standings. So all season long, I was like, I'm watching those Cardinals to see when they come back, and they can never figure it out. So, I mean, going off the starting pitching, just want to do some projections here. So like you were talking, Cardinals, Sonny Gray, Miles Mikolas, Lance Lynn, Steven Matz, and Kyle Gibson. That's a solid rotation. Now, if Lance Lynn returns to form, like we saw there early on last year, and then you also, like you were talking, brought in Sonny Gray, been pitching very well. The only guy that really brings a question would be Steven Matz in that starting rotation. I don't know. You don't know what to expect out of Matz there, but, I mean, to me, this is a pretty good starting rotation here with the Cardinals.
I think Matz ultimately is going to be the number 5 anyways, where I don't see him being in that rotation past the All-Star break. I see him kind of anchoring that number 5 spot, and I do think when we get closer to that trade deadline, if the Cardinals are in it, I do think the Cardinals will trade for a number 5 starter at that point, which means either Matz goes as part of that trade, or they just move Matz to the bullpen kind of where he was when his career got started with the Mets.
Yeah, and I mean, jumping over to lineup for the Cardinals here, you look at this lineup, Brendan Donovan at second. He's been solid for him, Gold Glove winner. And then also, like you were talking, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado coming back. The only question mark is going to be Wynn there in the infield at shortstop. Last season, he hit 172 there. Short stint, only 37 games. Not like he was crazy up there for a while. It's just going to be, can he get used to that starting pitching? Is he going to adapt to big league pitching here? Was a great prospect for this Cardinals team. And, they did bring in Brandon Crawford too, right? They got Crawford now. So that's still, seeing Crawford in a St. Louis uniform doesn't sit right for me. I'll be honest with you. Doesn't sit right in there. But other than that, you got Wilson Contreras behind the plate. We know a lot about Wilson Contreras. You do covering the Cubs there. You've seen a lot of Wilson Contreras. I'm not a fan, but at the end of the day, still a solid catcher there. If he brings a bat to the party, and then the outfield for him, Lars Nootbaar, you got Tommy Edman and Jordan Walker. What does Walker bring to this team in this next season? Is he going to bring that average with the pop? We saw the pop a little bit last year there. Not high average. Is he going to bring that to this major league level? So, looking at this starting lineup, or what they're projecting at least right now, barring injury or anything that happens, who are you looking at in this Cardinals lineup that they could improve with? Or, what are you seeing right now when you see the Cardinals?
Honestly, I think Brandon Crawford to me is the X factor. And when you look at this Cardinals team last year, they were one of the worst defensive teams in baseball. What does Brandon Crawford give you at the shortstop position? Basically Gold Glove defense every single season. So even if Mason Wynn is there and Mason Wynn struggles, you still have Brandon Crawford that you can slot at shortstop. You can move Mason Wynn to second base because Brandon Donovan can also play in the outfield. Brandon Donovan can DH. Tommy Edman's coming off of shoulder surgery or elbow surgery, I believe, so there's a chance that Tommy Edman might just be the DH towards the beginning of the season while he gets some of that arm strength back, which allows you to move Brandon Donovan back into the outfield. And then you go Arenado, Crawford, Wynn, and Goldschmidt in the infield, Walker and Donovan as part of that outfield. And I do think Jordan Walker is going to have a great year this year. I think I've compared Jordan Walker to a Matt Holliday, a guy that's going to kind of hit in the 260, 270 range with a boatload of power. He's going to give you 20, 25 steals. If you get anything close to that out of Jordan Walker, you have 4 legitimate guys in that lineup that can beat you, plus the speed with Tommy Edman and Mason Wynn and some of those other guys.
And that's not to mention even Nolan Gorman or Dylan Carlson. A lot of people forget about Dylan Carlson. This was a guy who broke onto the scene for him. They figure him out a little bit. That's a solid team right there in the Cardinals, a dangerous team.
And losing Tyler O'Neill, too. A lot of people forget that Tyler O'Neill was traded. But the reason why Tyler O'Neill was traded was because of Jordan Walker. Everyone is so high on Jordan Walker and the type of player he can be that it made Tyler O'Neill expendable. And Tyler O'Neill was their best hitter last year. So if you didn't trade him away and you left him in this lineup would even be that much deeper.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So looking at the bullpen for this Cardinals team, you got Ryan Hesley in there, Giovanni Gallegos, Jojo Romero, Palante. You have some pieces in there. The bullpen could be a question mark for the Cardinals. Getting to some of those high leverage guys. You don't have the Cardinals with a lot of big names. Something that you don't see a lot with the Cardinals. Not a lot of big names there in the bullpen, but they still got firepower. So, is the bullpen to you? To me, it's a concern. If I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm looking at the bullpen. I'm saying we got pieces out there, but it still makes me nervous. We don't have a lot of high leverage pieces. Could you see the Cardinals maybe moving and getting some pieces out there in that bullpen yet?
I could. The thing with the Cardinals bullpen is they have a lot of heat, but not necessarily a lot of command. Because a lot of their high leverage guys, Gianni Gallegos, when Jordan Hicks was here before they traded him away, Alex Reyes, when he went to the pen, they can all hit triple digits. But they're also walking almost as many guys as they're striking out because they can't locate their pitches. So when it comes to the Cardinals bullpen, they have a lot of puzzle pieces. They just don't know where to place these puzzle pieces. They don't know if Gallegos can be a closer or a setup guy. They don't know if some of these other guys, like Hazley, can be a closer or a setup guy. Gallegos has 18 career saves. Hazley has 15 career saves. They have 3 other guys in that bullpen that all have 10 career saves. But you don't know if you can count on them for the closer role for a whole season. So they have a bunch of pieces that they want to put together. They just have no idea what to do with those pieces yet. I think that'll be a concern early on. But as the season unfolds, I think those pieces will start coming together, and then you'll start to kind of see the direction that bullpen's going to go.
Okay. So bullpen, definitely a question with the Cardinals. Otherwise, they're sitting solid heading into this 2024 season. I want to jump into your realm here now. I want to talk about these Chicago Cubs. I hate the Cubs, got to be honest with you, but that's my job. I got to hate the Cubs, right? So getting into this Cubs team, they added in some pieces in this last offseason, but I'm going to let you take the lead here. You tell me a little bit about this Cubs team, rotation-wise, lineup-wise, whatever you got for me. Tell me about this Cubs team.
I mean, the Cubs are virtually trotting out the same exact team that they had last year. They brought Bellinger back, which was kind of that missing piece to the whole free agent puzzle that they got last minute. They did, however, bring in Michael Busch, who is a top 50 Major League prospect to play first base, and they really didn't have any first basemen last year because they had Eric Hosmer and Trey Mancini, who were both garbage. And then they went and got Shota Imanaga to basically replace Marcus Stroman, who, in my opinion, is going to be an upgrade there because Marcus Stroman kind of crapped himself the second half of the season last year, and really, in my opinion, I think he did cost the Cubs a playoff berth last year because his last 8 starts were just atrocious. But you still got Jameson Taillon, you still have Hendricks, you still have Steele. Taillon's probably going to start the year on the IL now with a bad back, so now you got to figure something out there. But they have a very good bullpen. You have Drew Smiley in the bullpen who can start and relieve. You have Javier Assad who can start and he can be a reliever. You have Wisniewski who can start and he can be a reliever. And then your back end, you have Alzolay, Hector Neris, Julian Merriweather, and Mark Leiter Jr. So out of your 8 relievers, you have 4 guys that can start and can also relieve. So Craig Counsell is going to have that flexibility. Counsell, to me, is going to be the biggest difference. And I said when the Cubs signed Craig Counsell, I said they won the offseason already. And that's because the one thing that Craig Counsell always did in Milwaukee, he was always able to win with what he was given. He was never given the most talent. He was never given the most money. He always found a way to win with what he had. And you kind of look at the way this Cubs team is set up now and kind of the way they're set up for the future. Yes, they have veterans like Cody Bellinger and Ian Happ and Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson. But their future is going to be the prospects that they have coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. David Ross did not play prospects. He never liked to play prospects, which is ultimately why I think they kind of faded down the stretch last year because the veterans were getting tired because they weren't getting days off. And David Ross wouldn't give prospects a chance because he never trusted them. Craig Counsell trusts these prospects. He's going to throw them in. He's going to throw them in high leverage situations, and he's going to let them learn from their mistakes because ultimately that's how you improve. I do think the first 3 months of the season is going to be very rough for the Cubs just because I think Counsell's going to be trying a lot of different things to see kind of what he has. But as the season goes on, I think the Cubs are going to be kind of in a similar position that they were last year. I see them winning 83, 84 games. I think they're a third-place team in this division where, depending on how the rest of the National League goes, they could get that final wild card spot, but ideally I think they'll miss it by a couple of games just because their division is going to be so weak anyways. I think only one team's going to get in. But it's going to be the 2025 and beyond where I think this team is really going to be kind of one of those National League threats after this year. But I think this year is going to be just kind of a mixed bag and just figuring it out process.
Okay. You covered it all. That's about the only questions I had with the Cubs. I mean, like you were talking there, it's just question marks with that starting rotation right now for me with the Cubs. I mean, like you said, you have the balance there with Hendricks and bringing in Shada, and then you have Steele and Talon, but you have that question mark with Wicks right now. And then is Jameson Talon going to stay healthy for you for a whole year? That's going to be a big question mark there. Otherwise, I mean, I got some more questions. About the Cubs here coming up, but I got to get to a couple of our sponsors quick before we move on here. First, your hometown team, Century 21 Gold Key Realty. Call Peggy Sue or Anna to find your dream home, or if you're looking to sell, find them on Facebook at your hometown team, Century 21 Gold Key Realty, or stop in and see them at their location in Marshfield. Also, Sports Scene, sports cards, and memorabilia. Stop in there in the Marshfield Mall. Talk to Al. He'll help you get all your sporting cards, memorabilia, jerseys, whatever you need sporting-wise. He's got it there at the store, located in the Marshfield Mall. Sports Scene in Marshfield. Also, Pittsville Farm and Home Center. At the store, they serve you anything from hydraulic hoses to red roses. Stop in and see the awesome crew at Pittsville Farm and Home Center in Pittsville, Wisconsin. But hey, I got a couple more questions with the Cubbies here. I just got to know, Brewer fan, I'm just wondering, does Craig Counsell give the Cubs an edge over the Brewers? Because, he knows some of these younger guys the Brewers are trying to bring in now. He knows some of their tendencies. He knows these pitchers a little bit. Do you believe Craig Counsell now with the Cubs gives them that little bit of an edge, in that game going up against the Brewers?
I don't necessarily know if he gives them that edge against the Brewers because, yes, he knows the Brewers so well, but the Brewers also know the Cubs well enough because they play each other all the time anyways. Where I think he gives the Cubs the edge is going to be the close games, the metrics, all the things that he excelled at when he was with Milwaukee. I mean, the guy last year was 31-14 in one-run ball games last year. The Chicago Cubs were 20-36. Right there is the big difference because David Ross did not know how to win the close games because he didn't know what matchups and what buttons to push. Craig Counsell knows what buttons to push and what matchups to use in the close games. We don't know what Pat Murphy's going to be able to do in that same situation because he's never done it before. Yes, he's obviously been Craig Counsell's right-hand man for the last several years, but until you're in his shoes and until you're managing a team, you don't know what buttons to push. You don't know what matchups to go with in kind of crucial situations, and that's where I think Craig Counsell gives them the edge just because for the longest time, he's been so good at the metrics. He's been so good at the analytics that I think that's what a lot of Brewer fans are failing to look past. Like a lot of Brewer fans are just saying, Counsell was just a manager. It's going to be easy to move on from him because we still have players. But when you have a manager that knows what he's doing with the metrics, that's not just something you can replace overnight. That's something that is learned by experience, and that's something that Counsell's always done well with.
You got to remember, though, Pat Murphy taught Craig Counsell. He was his manager back in the day. So, I mean, and there was talk. Pat Murphy did get in Craig Counsell's grill a little bit there in Milwaukee. He didn't agree with all the decisions Craig Counsell made. And me as a Brewer fan, I mean, there was lots of times where it was like, lay down a bunt. You got this situation with a bad hitter coming up, like, say, last year, Bryce Terrain coming up. The guy's not so good hitting the baseball last year. He's got the speed, though. Lay down a bunt. Work it from that angle. A lot of time, and the lineups with Craig Counsell. Lineups with Craig Counsell, that's the only thing I can say with Craig, always confused me. They always got to me. We had lots of times with, like, Sal Frelick batting in the cleanup spot. We had Willie Adames struggling at the top of the order. Now, did he do that to try and maybe spark something in there? That's a possibility. But there's just always that question mark with Craig and decision-making at times. At other times, I love the guy. I mean, he pushed the right buttons in games, and the guy, I mean, I believe was a part of some big wins for the Brewers. Yeah. Same time, there was always that question with him. But that's with anybody, right? That's with any manager out there. So it definitely will be interesting. I agree, though. I don't give an edge. I don't think there's an edge either way, just because, like you said, we've seen Kyle Hendricks way too many times. We know what Kyle Hendricks has got all about. And the Cubs, they've seen the Brewers how many times now. They know what the Brewers are about. So I believe there is no edge either. But, I mean, going with Craig Counsell, one more question here about Craig. Have you seen any, like, big changes, good or bad, that Craig Counsell has made with this Cubs team so far?
I just think the team is more relaxed. I mean, coming to Chicago, there's always pressure. Obviously, winning that World Series 7 years ago, kind of taking that 108-year window off the table, there's less pressure than there was before. But coming to Chicago, there's always more pressure, and you've seen that when the Cubs went out and got Jason Hayward. That contract never panned out, just because I don't think he could handle the pressure that was expected of him in Chicago. People expected him to be this 25, 30 homer hitter that he was in Atlanta when, if you look at his numbers, he only hit 20 home runs twice in his career. He was never a big homer guy, so the year that the Cubs signed him, he's coming off of a 25 homer, 100 RBI season with the Cardinals and the Braves, and everyone's like, oh, that's the Jason Hayward we expect. Well, that's not the one that you normally are going to get. You need to understand that these players, they might have breakout years here and there, but there's still a track record of how these players are. And I think a lot of the players that signed with the Cubs, and Dansby Swanson's a perfect example last year, came off the best year of his career before he signed that contract with the Cubs. Got to Chicago, everyone expected him to do what he did his final year in Atlanta, but when you look at his baseball card, he's a .257 hitter who averages 16 homers and 74 RBIs a season. What did he do last year in Chicago? Hit a .252 with 20 homers and a 74 RBIs. He basically did what his baseball card says he was going to do, but because it wasn't at the numbers that he did before he got to Chicago, kind of people look at it as a disappointment.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you there. Yeah, I agree with you there. So I just want to tap into one more team before we move on here. Out of the Central, I'm not really worried about the Pirates. Not really worried about the Pirates. Pirates are sitting down in a dumpster fire right now. But looking at this Reds team going into this next year, starting rotation could be very good for this team. You're going to have Frankie Montas. You're going to have Hunter Green, Nick Martinez, Graham Ashcraft, and Andrew Abbott. Now, some of those guys, a little bit lesser of names, but they got some good stuff. And then you look at Hunter Green. He's got some firepower there in that starting rotation. And, I mean, looking at the lineup for this Reds team, you're going to have a guy like Elly De La Cruz coming back here in his second year. there's a lot of pieces to like. Also, the addition of Caballero there at third base for this team. And you got the outfield with Friedel out there and Fraley, also Spencer Steer. So this is a solid Reds team, but the only question mark, and it seems like it's the only question mark that you have every single year with this Reds team, how far can the pitching actually take them? So to me, I still have question marks when I watch this pitching staff. They have some promise, but it still worries me. To you, are you seeing this Reds team as a threat to maybe jump into that third spot, maybe into the second spot in the NL Central?
I actually have them as a second place team. I do think you look at all the strides they made last year, and they were right with the Cubs at the end of the season, battling for that final wild card spot before fading at the end as well. Not having Nolvi Marte, I believe his name is, their top prospect who just got busted for steroids, is definitely going to hurt because he was expected to be called up basically within the first month of the season. So now they're not going to have him till the All-Star break. So I think that's going to hurt him. I do think the Reds are going to make one more big move at some point. I keep circling around Adam Duvall. I think Adam Duvall signs with Cincinnati to be used as a DH. Or the other name, which I am very surprised he hasn't signed. And when you look at all the free agents left on the market, he is realistically the only free agent that you can say honestly fits with every single team because of the position he plays. I think JD Martinez ends up in Cincinnati as a DH because that is the position he plays. Being that we have a universal DH now, every team needs a DH. You get JD Martinez, you know two things. He's a DH every single day. He's going to hit in the middle of your lineup, whether that's 3, 4, or 5, and he's going to give you 30 homers and 100 RBIs a year. Put him in Cincinnati, that might go 41-20 because of the way the ball flies out of Cincinnati. So, I mean, you add a bat like Adam Duvall or JD Martinez, that lineup is that much deeper. But like you said, the pitching has always been the question. Hunter Green is going to be great. Graham Ashcraft is going to be great. They have another young rookie they started last year who's going to be great. Losing Tyler Mahle is going to hurt, but they replaced Tyler Mahle with Frankie Montas, a very good starter in Oakland for years before he kind of faded off a little bit with the Yankees because of a shoulder injury. But if you watch his last couple spring starts, Montas is throwing harder than he's ever thrown before. He's consistently at 98 to 99 right now with that forkball, and if Montas gets anywhere close to what he was in Oakland, Cincinnati's going to be scary.
Yeah. I mean, this is always that team, right? They could go one of two ways. And I think, maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year they figure it out and they turn it all around. Last year, I got worried about them. I really did. I was like, this team keeps climbing. They're hanging around. Fell apart late. I don't know if that happens again this year, but like you're saying there's still some guys out there, additions that could make this Reds team even better. They also have Josh Harrison on the bench there, and Jonathan India is actually projected to be a bench utility player for him. But both guys, great players coming off the bench there even. So this is a solid Reds team. I really do think the NL Central is going to be better than what a lot of people are projecting. I don't think it's going to be as bad as what they think. I mean, you look at the projection right now, like I said earlier, they have the Cardinals barely above 500, the Cubs at 500, then the Brewers, then the Reds. I think this NL Central is going to be a little bit better than what they're saying. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I really, like we've talked about today, there's a lot of good teams, a lot of good players inside this division, and I think it's going to be a lot better than what they are saying right now, projection-wise. I mean, looking at this division.
I think it's going to be, like I said, I think the Cardinals are going to win 88 to 90 games. I think the Reds are going to be around 86. I think the Cubs and Brewers are both going to be in that 83 to 84 win range. And I think the Pirates are going to be around 78. I don't think the Pirates are going to be as bad as what some people think, especially when you got a guy like Paul Skeens who's going to be up probably by May. And he's going to be the anchor of that staff for years to come. They just re-signed Mitch Keller. So obviously they're going to have a great 1-2 punch at the top of their rotation. They got David Bednar in the back of the bullpen, which is one of the most underrated closers in baseball, and he kind of proved it last year. And then you have O'Neal Cruz and Ke'Bryan Hayes and all these young pieces that started to kind of show their potential last year. Pittsburgh's going to surprise a lot of people last year, and you can look at last season. They were sitting at first place in the NL Central until about July 5th. They kind of showed that they can compete with the NL Central for a good portion of that year. They just kind of ran out of gas kind of towards the middle of the season. I don't see that happening this year. I just think they're going to be a better overall team, which is going to make the Central, record-wise, they may not have the best records, but I think they could be the most competitive division because every team is so close. And when 4 of the 5 teams in that division have top 5 farm systems in baseball, it's going to be one of those divisions that's going to be competitive for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things where it's going to be interesting to see how these second-year guys produce, right? Getting into their second year now. We saw what Ellie De La Cruz did year 1. How does he produce year 2? Brewers have a lot of that right now. If all those guys continue to hit like they did last year, that's a scary team right away. Cubs have a couple good pieces in there. Same with the Cardinals. And then the Pirates, a lot of young pieces, like you said. How does O'Neal Cruz come back? We saw that was Ellie De La Cruz before Ellie De La Cruz was O'Neal Cruz. So how does he come back and fit in the fold? Brian Hayes. There is a lot of good young talent in the NL Central. And like you said, it is going to be great to see throughout the years here how that transpires into what could be some super teams here in the NL Central down the road. Brewers, probably not. They don't like to spend money, so we probably won't keep these guys around. We'll trade them off. We'll send them over to, I don't know, the Mets, the Dodgers. Mets got David Stearns now, so the Mets will probably be our trade partner from now on. We'll just ship guys.
We got Adrian Hauser, too, so they're already starting.
That was the dumbest thing the Brewers ever did, was traded Adrian Hauser, because now we're sitting here with this starting rotation full of question marks right now. Freddie Peralta's the top, but who's after that? Wade Miley's on the shelf right now. We have rookie galore in there. Jacob Junis, I mean, that's about it. That's the next guy we have coming in.
Colin Ray.
I mean, I like Colin Ray. He's a solid pitcher, but he's not a number 2. He's not a 3. He's a 4 or 5. That was Hauser, but I liked Hauser. He was my 3 to 4 ERA guy, but he was solid. I always could count on what Adrian Hauser was going to give me. So, I mean, that's about it. That's all I got for the end. Anything else you want to add NL Central wise here before we move on?
No, I think we've touched on it. Like it's gonna be like the AL Central, except in the opposite way. The AL Central is competitively bad, where you have the Minnesota Twins, and then everybody else is just very bad, but yet all their games are competitive because the other 4 teams are kind of on that same level. The NL Central, I think, is going to be the opposite, where all those teams are so close that the margin for error is going to be so little that all the games are going to be competitive. Where every team, I think, at one point is going to be in first place in the division at some point this season. I think every team is going to have a shot to win that division heading into September. I think you'll just start to see the experience of the Cardinals, the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Reds kind of overtake the Pirates once we get to September. And it'll just be kind of a 4-team race once that final month comes.
It's going to be a great season. That's all I know. It's going to be a great year of baseball there in the NL Central. But, hey, before we move on here and talk about a little NFC North news, I want to talk about a couple of our sponsors here. First, Game Day Supply in Onalaska. Do you have a sports club or team? Are you looking for some custom uniforms or apparel? Check out the awesome crew at Game Day Supply to help your team get the sweetest gear. Find them on Facebook at Game Day Supply or online at GameDaySupply.net. Also, Sport and Spine Clinic in Greenwood. If you've been injured lately, whether it was at work or it was on the field, on the court, wherever it was, and you need some physical therapy, stop in there at Sport and Spine Clinic in Greenwood. See Chad. He'll get you right. He'll get you back out on the court, back out on the field, back to work, whatever it is. He'll get you back there. Sport and Spine Clinic in Greenwood, Wisconsin. But I want to get into a little bit of NFC North talk, and you cover the Bears. So the big question mark, and we talked about it a little bit before this, but big question mark was going to be, what were they going to do? Justin Fields, or was it going to be, I mean, we're all going to assume Caleb Williams will be coming to the Bears now with that 1 pick. We saw Justin Fields get shipped out to the Patriots. I want to know how you feel about, I don't know, the Bears in total right now, but also what's going on with this Bears organization. Are you comfortable with Caleb Williams? To me, $1 million talent, 1 cent head. That's where I'm at with Caleb Williams. I want to know how you feel about Caleb Williams. I'm assuming he will become a Chicago Bear.
In my opinion, I wouldn't touch Caleb Williams with a 10-foot pole. From a skills side of things, no one's going to argue the skills. He is the most talented quarterback that's entered this draft since Andrew Luck. No one's going to question that. But ultimately, he is a head case. And you saw that against Notre Dame last year. You saw that against Utah last year. You saw that against Oregon, against Washington, and all the games that he lost last year. When he faces adversity, he doesn't know how to battle it. He just kind of crawls up in a corner and goes and hides and just makes a bunch of stupid mistakes that you cannot make at the NFL level. You didn't see that his first year in USC because USC was such a high-powered offense that they were just able to outscore you every single game. Yes, they had the high-powered offense last year, but so did Oregon, so did Washington, so did all these other teams, and if your defense can't stop anybody, it's not going to matter. And ultimately, I don't think Caleb Williams was really prepared to kind of be in some of those situations last year, which he's going to have to be prepared this year. When it comes to the Bears, at this point, I don't think they have a choice but to keep Justin Fields. I think they're going to have to go into the season with both of them because realistically, the only trade partner for Fields was Atlanta. And now that Atlanta got Kirk Cousins on a 4-year, $180 million deal, there's only really two teams that need a quarterback at this point. Denver, but with Sean Payton as their coach, I don't think Sean Payton goes with a guy like Justin Fields because he's going to want more of the pocket passer like Drew Brees. And the only other team is Minnesota. But I don't see Chicago trading Justin Fields into the same division. So at this point, unless there is a quarterback that gets hurt in training camp, unless there's a quarterback that gets hurt in the preseason, I don't see Fields being traded or released. I think the Bears are going to hang on to him, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do an open competition in training camp just to make it look like Justin Fields had a fair shot. But he could be one of those quarterbacks that just kind of sits on the bench and then gets shipped off once an injury happens to somebody.
That was my mistake earlier. I did say Justin Fields was traded. I saw a rumor about the Patriots. Patriots. That's my mistake there.
They tried to get him 4 years ago. That's who they wanted in the draft. And then when the Bears traded up from 15 to 11 to take him, they were stuck with Mac Jones because he was the only quarterback left. They never wanted Mac Jones. They wanted Justin Fields in the first place.
I don't think anybody wanted Mac Jones, but that's just my take on that one. But yeah, I was a rumor earlier. That was my mistake there. But the Bears, I mean, last season, the run defense was good, right? The defense wasn't terrible for this Bears team.
They ended up number 8 in the NFL in defense.
Yeah, I thought their run defense was top 3, if not number 1. They were at the top.
Run defense was number 1. The secondary was number 15. But after week 11, so the final 6 weeks of the season, the Bears' run defense was number 1 and their secondary was number 3. So they had the number 1 overall defense in the NFL the final 2 months of the season.
So the pieces are there on the defense, right? They got the defense. Now it's looking at the offensive side. You go into this upcoming draft, you have the number 9 pick. You're going to have that number 1 pick. I mean, to me, this is the way I would shake it is I'm not completely sold Justin Fields isn't the guy yet in Chicago. Now, that's just my opinion. A lot of Bears fans out there think differently, but I would maybe talk about trading that pick. I mean, you could trade the 1 pick, set yourself up. You still got that number 9. There's a lot of teams that will jump up because, hey, they want Caleb Williams. They want a shot on him, right? I mean, to you, looking at this draft coming up here, do you see you can tell me both ways, what you would do and what you think the Bears are going to do, because I think we both know what the Bears are going to do at the end of the day. But how do you feel about this upcoming draft? Are you trading that 1? Are you staying in the 1? How do you think the Bears will go about this?
Well, I mean, you look at what they've done so far. They added DeAndre Swift, which was kind of a surprise pickup. I didn't even see. I knew they were looking at running backs, but I did not see DeAndre Swift on kind of that list. So adding him is huge. They added Gerald Everett today, which is going to give them one of the better 1-2 tight end combinations in the NFL with Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett. They got Kevin Byard the other day to play safety to replace Eddie Jackson, a very solid pickup. They added Jonathan Owens today as kind of that depth piece on the defense. So they added more pieces to their already good defense. But offensively, they need more help on the offensive line, which I think they'll address yet in free agency. They need 2 wide receivers now that Darnell Mooney signed with Atlanta today. I heard T. Higgins has been mentioned with the Bears for a while as kind of a trade piece, so I wouldn't be shocked. If I was the Bears, I would be trading that number 1 pick. I would be trading that number 1 pick to New England at number 3. Letting New England go 3-1, so New England can take a quarterback at 3, or at number 1. Washington can take one at 2, and then when Chicago picks at 3, you take Marvin Harrison Jr. Gives you one of your receivers. Then Chicago picks again at number 9. Take Rome Odunze at number 9. Give Justin Fields Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., who he played with in college, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet, and DeAndre Swift. If Justin Fields can't succeed in that kind of an offense, he'll never succeed in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that is one heck of a receiver core there, so you build yourself for the future there. And, I mean, that's the way to shake it. If you're not sold on Caleb Williams, that doesn't mean Drake May is going to be any better for you. And you look at that 3rd pick, who are they projecting in there right now? That was
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, but Daniels, smaller guy. You worry about injury with smaller guys. If you don't have the offensive line to put in front of these guys, it's going to be a disaster to start there, especially with smaller guys. So maybe the Bears trade out of there. That could be interesting. But so the Bears, they address the offensive needs there, especially in the skill position room at the running back with DeAndre Swift. We just got to see, how does DeAndre Swift play without that Eagles offensive line, right? That Eagles offensive line was phenomenal. Coming to the Bears now, if they don't address that offensive line need, it might be a struggle. So we'll see how that all fares there. I mean, looking at the NFC North right now, the Packers are adding left and right. Yep. I mean, the only thing that surprised me with the Packers was the release of Aaron Jones. The only thing I can think of is they didn't want to pay for Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. They didn't want to pay that $17 million to Aaron Jones.
I actually had another theory on it. They released David Bakhtiari earlier in the day. Then they released Aaron Jones. Those were the final two players that were left from Aaron Rodgers' regime. I'm at the point where Brian Gutekunst pretty much has now moved on completely from Aaron Rodgers, that he just wanted to do away with anybody that had any connection with him. Yes, you could make the case that Christian Watson and some of those guys were with him, but were they really with him? They were drafted his final year in Green Bay and really weren't with him for like a long period of time. Jones and Bakhtiari were those final two pieces that played with him for an extended period of time, and I think Gutekunst just said, we're going to wipe everything clean of Aaron Rodgers. This is Jordan Love's team, and we're going to go with what we think makes him better.
Yeah, I could see it. I could completely see it there. I mean, they wanted to get rid of Aaron Rodgers completely. I mean, that's a solid theory. I mean, there's a 50-50 shot. That's the actual truth right there behind it. And, they asked Aaron Jones for the millionth time to take another pay cut. They wanted him, I believe, I saw the numbers earlier.
To go from $12 million to $5 million. And
$12 million to $5 million. Yep.
I'm sorry. That's a slap in the face for everything he's done for that franchise and everything that he's done for that community.
Yep.
He's given you 2 hometown discounts. He's given you 2 seasons where he's taken a pay cut. Asking him to do it for a third time, he said he would, but he said he would only go down to $8 million, which is what they paid Josh Jacobs. But yet they're like, no, you're only worth $5 million. That's a slap in the face to him, and I'm glad he left because I would have taken a third pay cut that much.
Yeah, and I asked the question earlier on Facebook, and our guys messaged me back on Facebook, and we were talking about it, and I was like, maybe that was one last FU to the Packers, was to sign for $1 million more with the Vikings than what he would have with the Packers, and I think it might have been. I mean, he had his choices, right? The Jets would have called at some point because Aaron Rodgers wants all of his boys out there in New York. They would have called up for Aaron Jones. There was a lot of teams that would have called Aaron Jones and said, hey, we need a running back in here. So, I mean, definitely it's a theory right there. And I can't say I don't agree with your theory on Aaron Jones because they went into that day and they said that, well, we didn't plan on signing Josh Jacobs. It kind of just happened. No, that's what they told Aaron Jones. That doesn't just happen.
The way I looked at it, too, is when they signed Josh Jacobs, I said the Packers were the favorites to come out of the NFC. Because you have Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones in your running back room, you can essentially do what the Detroit Lions did with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You put Aaron Jones kind of in that position that Jahmyr Gibbs was in, where you can put him out wide in the slot. You can use him as end-arounds. You can use him on screen plays to kind of use his speed and athleticism to his advantage. And then Josh Jacobs would be the David Montgomery to run between the tackles. Defenses would not be able to kind of key in on one specific player because they would have to account for both on the field. It opens things up for Jordan Love. It opens things up for those wide receivers, and it makes that offense a lot more dynamic than what they were last year.
Yep. No, 100% agree with you. I was excited, and then it was like 25 minutes later, there goes Aaron Jones out the door, and it's like, oh, yep, that's the Packers. That's the Packers, I know. But, hey, they got some good signings. They got McKinney there on the defense now. They got some pieces. This is a solid team yet. We look at the Vikings. They got a little bit more question marks, right? Kirk Cousins now with the Falcons. The dude knows how to make money, right? He takes advantage of franchises who need a quarterback.
I want his agent. All I say is I want his agent is amazing.
Yeah, because this guy's set to make over $400 million here in the NFL when it's all said and done.
They said with the contract that he just signed, he's going to become the richest quarterback in NFL history because his agent gets him everything fully guaranteed.
One playoff win, and this guy's going to make more money than some of the best quarterbacks all time. It's ridiculous. It is. But, hey, away from Kirk Cousins, the guy, he's a baller, right? We're going to get away from Kirk Cousins, but the Vikings now. You told me earlier they got Sam Darnold now, right? So you add him to that quarterback room. We got Spaceman, right? Josh Dobbs. We got Mullins in there. Vikings still have that 11th pick. I could see them going towards the quarterback room yet.
They're drafting a QB at that 11th pick, if not trading up to get a better one.
You gotta find somebody there who's going to be the replacement of the future, because you cannot bank on Justin Jefferson's going to be the next guy to say, I want out of here, because this is a mess right now. So, I mean, looking at the Vikings, they're kind of dropping down. I'm not going to say the Bears are going to be terrible, but they're dropping down with the Bears right now in that 3-4 spot, solidifying their spot in that 3 hole right now. If the Bears don't get better, right? But right now, this Vikings team is falling. They are falling fast, right?
I mean, essentially what this does, Sam Darnold is going to be a placeholder for 1 year, for 6 weeks, for 7 weeks, however long it takes for their rookie quarterback to be ready. The only way that they're going to be able to keep Justin Jefferson here right now is if they give him some say as to who he wants as the quarterback they select. If he says he doesn't care, you're going to stay at 11 and kind of see who falls to you. But if he has a specific name that he wants, let's just say Jaden Daniels because they're both from LSU, you're going to be forced to trade into the top 4 to get Jaden Daniels, which means you're going to be taking something else away from the whatever you have left on your team right now. At what cost do you make that move? So then you go to Justin Jefferson again saying, I get you on Jaden Daniels, but we don't have the assets to trade into the top 5 to get him. Who's your second option? Let's just say his second option is Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. You can probably trade 11 to 8. Atlanta picks 8 because now Atlanta's got Kirk Cousins. They don't need a quarterback. So that's a little bit easier of a move to make because it's not going to require as much. The one thing that Minnesota has done, they brought in Aaron Jones, which is a great pickup and a bigger upgrade than Alexander Mattison. You look at the defense, they added Greenard to basically replace Danielle Hunter, who ironically went to Houston, which is where Greenard's from. So they're just swapping teams. You added Blake Cashman, who is one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. You brought in Andrew Van Ginkel to be reunited with Brian Flores. So you basically changed your entire linebacker room. It looks like Xavier Howard is going to end up in Minnesota to go back with Brian Flores, so he'll be on the other side of Byron Murphy. So what it looks like Minnesota's doing at this point is it looks like they're going to spend a lot of their money on defense. And they're going to try to keep these games close and have the defense win the games for them next year as opposed to the offense, which is what has been winning them games the last 4 or 5 years, which kind of gives a rookie quarterback a better situation because you're going to have a rookie starting not being forced to score 25, 30 points a game because the defense is going to hold opponents closer to 20. I feel more comfortable with a rookie quarterback coming in giving me 20, 21 points a game as opposed to 25, 30.
Yeah, no, I agree. That defense in Minnesota has been bad. They have been bad for the past couple of years, and that's what's really held them back. I thought Kirk Cousins, I mean, you look at his stats, this guy isn't bad. No. There's no reason why he hasn't won a playoff game here or there. The guy's got good stats. He's a top 10 to 15 quarterback every single year, if not in the top 10. So Kirk Cousins kind of got wasted away there in Minnesota. But as of right now, I mean, looking at this NFC North, just to wrap it up here, this NFC North, you got the Lions. They proved it last year. Packers came on late. Vikings seem to be in kind of a rebuild mode right now. And the Bears, well, I like to say they're still the Bears, but they're on their way up, right? This Bears team's getting better. Where do you see this thing? Right now, looking at these teams, if you had to say, this is my clear-cut favorite, this is my 4 team right now, where are you looking right now? I would be more like Packers, Lions. Those are my top 2. And then I probably would say the Bears would be my 3 going into next year just because of the uncertainty with the Vikings. So I put the Bears in the 3. Where are you at right now looking at the NFC North?
I mean, you have to put the Lions and the Packers as the favorite. I'm more so leaning toward the Lions a little bit just because they went to the NFC Championship game last year and they're really not losing anything from that team. They have pretty much everybody. They lost C.J. Gardner, but he only played 2 games last year anyway, so he didn't really have a big impact. But they added some pieces already. They're going to add more because they have a lot of cap space. So I still put the Lions as a slight favorite. Not a big favorite, a slight favorite over Green Bay, mainly because adding Josh Jacobs to the Packers is going to be huge. You saw how Jordan Love played the first 8 games compared to the second 8 games, so you got to see if he can put it together for a full 16 games. But then you also have to worry about the sophomore slump. And I understand that Jordan Love is in his 5th season, but it's his sophomore season as a starter. And you see it a lot of times with rookies who end up having a very good rookie season. They struggle a little bit as a sophomore. So if Jordan Love does take a little bit of a step back, how's that defense going to look with a new defensive coordinator? How's that defense going to look without Devondre Campbell and some of these other pieces that have been a huge part of that defense for the last couple of years? But I still think both the Lions and the Packers are both playoff teams. I expect them both to win 11 or 12 games. I think the Bears are kind of a 9-win team that could possibly battle it out for that number 7 seed in the NFC just because Caleb Williams, I think, could put him over the top. Same with Justin Fields if they give him enough weapons. But Minnesota, I think, is kind of that odd team out right now. I think they're a 5 or a 6-win team this year, and I think they're okay with it because if you look at whatever website is that tracks the salary cap, I can't remember what it is. Because Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter are gone, Minnesota is expected to have $130 million in cap space next year. So that right there is enough to get you Justin Jefferson because he's going to want $30 to $35 million per season. So that right there is enough to get Justin Jefferson. If you add a rookie quarterback, he's going to be on his rookie deal. So $130 million, even if you give Justin Jefferson $35 million, you still have $95 million to build that rest of your roster next year. So I think Minnesota this year is content to wave the white flag and say, we'll just kind of take it on the chin this year. We'll get another top 10 pick next year to help us out. And when we have all that cap money, we'll go all out because if you look at some of the free agents that are supposed to be in that free agent class last year or next year, if people think this year's free agent class is good, wait until next year's free agent class.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. So, I mean, you're kind of in the same boat with me. Lions and Packers up at the top there, and then you're going to have Vikings, Bears bottom there, but Vikings, they're kind of falling out right now. And that's okay. That's okay to see right now. If there's any team I want to see fall out, it's got to be the Vikings. I got to be honest with you. I don't like the Bears, but it's okay that the Vikings are dropping out of there. So before we end it here, I just want to give you a chance if there's any anywhere people can find you, social media, anything like that, or they can hear you talk. Where do people find you there on social media?
Yeah, obviously most of my stuff is going to be found on ChicagoSportsHQ.com where I cover the Cubs, the Bulls, and the Bears. I do some stuff on the White Sox and Blackhawks, but not too much. Those are kind of the 3 that I primarily do. I'm also on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network, which is a podcast network, which I do a lot of shows on there, which we're going to have you on, I believe, tomorrow or Thursday. So you'll be on that network with me one of these nights, so we'll get you on there. But that's where most of my stuff can be found. I also do a lot of reporting for my local high schools up in Northeast Wisconsin. So a lot of the papers up here, you can find some of my stuff up here as well.
Okay. Awesome. And we'll have you back here. We're going to get closer to the MLB start of this season. We'll get you back. We'll talk Brewer, Cubs, whatever we got to talk about. And we know as crazy as the NFL and everything else is, we're going to have more to talk about here as time moves on. But we want to thank you for being on here with us today. This has been Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow. But until then, deuces.